Our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta. Sanjay, thanks very much for joining us. And let's walk through what we know about Hillary Clinton's health. First of all, we'll play the video once again of her stumbling as she tries to get into that van. Give me your analysis. And you're a neurosurgeon.
Yeah, you know, Wolf, you watch it, you notice that someone is standing to her left side, seems to be helping her, but then as she's getting into the van there, you can see it's very noticeable. She's having difficulty sort of navigating, going off the curb, and then it seems when she's going into the van, she either stumbles, sort of loses her balance even more so at that point. But Wolf, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier. It is very noticeable what's happening there. We don't know anything more than that. We know that sometime later she appears to be fine, but that's really the last glimpse we get of what's going on at this particular time, Wolf.
If she is overheated as a result of spending an hour and a half at that 9/11 memorial service, and it was about 80 degrees at the time here in New York City, fainting is not necessarily all that unusual. Is that right?
Well, you know, a couple things. We don't know, first of all, that she in fact fainted. I mean, that's a term that's used quite a bit, but you know, we don't know that she had any difficulty with her consciousness or loss of consciousness or anything like that. But yes, to your point, people can have episodes where they become dehydrated. Their blood pressure drops a bit as a result, and they don't feel well. They feel unbalanced. They feel like they need to lie down. They might even feel nauseated, like they may want to throw up, things like that. But there's certain medications, I think, Wolf, that you're alluding to. A thyroid medication, for example, could have this impact, sort of making people feel a little bit more heated when other people think the conditions are normal. Also, antihistamine medications that are used to basically dry up your sinuses can also make you feel dry other ways, can make you feel more dehydrated. So in combination, these things would rise to the top of the list. Common things are common here, Wolf, and those would be the things that you'd want to really zero in on.
We know, according to her physician, she takes a drug called Coumadin, which is a blood thinner. Could that have that kind of impact, a side effect?
You know, it's an interesting point. I don't think that the blood thinner itself would have that sort of side effect. But what is interesting is that back in 2012, she did faint, according to her medical records, strike her head and develop this blood clot around her brain, which is why she was taking the blood thinner. She seems to have been taking it even before that. But why did she faint then exactly? Why is she faint now? Again, common things common. Someone feels dehydrated because of the conditions, because of not eating enough food, drinking enough liquids, and then you have medications that could even make that worse. These things all in combination could explain it. Could explain it back then and explain it now. But I think more than the blood thinners causing it, you know, is there some reason that she's had these episodes where she has, you know, stumbled, maybe even fainted?
Because they're talking about what's called hypothyroidism. Tell our viewers what that is.
Hypothyroidism, you have these hormones that are circulating in your body that are called thyroid hormones. Sometimes people can get diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which means you don't have enough of the thyroid hormone circulating in your body. People can feel very fatigued. They can be more likely to feel cold in warm settings. The flip side of that is that you give thyroid hormone back, and you're basically trying to increase the amount of thyroid hormone. People may tend to feel, they can feel better as a result of having their thyroid levels normalized, but they might have these feelings where they are more likely to feel overheated, to have problems like that. So that's one of the sort of known side effects of a medication like that. And again, the other medication, these antihistamines, I think she said recently, Wolf, you may know better than I, that she was having these allergies. She's had this coughing episode. She was going to increase her antihistamine doses. The antihistamines can work quite well. Again, you know, if someone's having nasal congestion, for example, but they can also tend to make people a little bit more dehydrated as a result. I bring this up only to say that, you know, we don't know. She didn't seem to go to a doctor. She didn't seem to get any medical testing, so we don't really know what exactly happened here. But common things are common, and those things would rise to the top of the list.
Because those coughing incidents in the last few days, once when she was aboard her plane speaking to reporters, once at a campaign event, she went into a pretty lengthy coughing incident, and her critics were saying, well, that's a sign she's not a healthy woman, but that could be a very simple explanation for that. But is it potentially related, the coughing incidents, to what we saw today?
Well, it's all of this, whether it is big, whether it is small, is speculative. I just want to state that again, well, in part because, again, she didn't have any medical testing. And just taking a step back, I think that if, regardless that she's Hillary Clinton, regardless that she's a candidate for president, if someone has an episode like this, getting a basic sort of checkup, getting an EKG, getting your blood pressure checked, maybe even some basic chemistry, laboratory results, I think would be, call it an abundance of caution, calling it being very thorough, whatever you want to call it, probably not a bad idea in a situation like this. But relating the coughing episode to this, the only way I think that that could potentially be related again is that she may have upped her medication, the antihistamine medication, so to try and control the symptoms of those coughing attacks, which may have been due to allergies. Those antihistamine medications, if you increase the dose, can make people feel dehydrated, can actually make them dehydrated, and maybe more likely to make them feel imbalanced, especially on a hot day like today.
So if she had, as her doctors have confirmed, she had this fainting issue at the end of 2012, she hit her head, she had a concussion, there was a blood clot that developed between her brain and her skull, if you will. She's been taking this blood thinner ever since. Presumably she's taking some other medication as well. What are the long-term effects of that, if any?
Well, so there's 2 points. I think one you just brought up again, which I think is worth repeating, is that she seems to have been taking blood thinners even before this episode in 2012. She had a history of what are known as DVT, or deep venous thrombosis, which are blood clots in the legs. Oftentimes they can be treated with blood thinners because you want to prevent them from actually breaking off and going to the lungs. So she had been on blood thinners even before 2012. With regard to the sort of long-term effect of that sort of injury that she had to her head and the blood collection, her doctors have talked about that. You do think about could there be a long-term impact, but she's been tested. They show that she's had no long-term effect. This is according to her doctor, her medical note. No long-term effect from that injury. And the blood clot around the brain, they say, is resolved as well. So the blood clot's not sitting there anymore. It is gone, having responded to these medications. So yes, you do worry about it, but it sounds like it got checked out.
All right, Sanjay is going to be with us this afternoon. We're going to continue to follow this story. Sanjay, thanks very, very much for that excellent update. Much more on this story, the political fallout, what's going on. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.